Ngā mihi atu ki ngā maunga, pai maunga o manga haururu tau te tihi o te matorongo kako, tēnā koutou. Me ngā awa e rere ana nei, tūtai kuri, ngāru roro tuki, tēnā koutou katoa. Me ngā whānau o ngā te kahununu, te haukainga, kora mai tātou, kia koutou, tēnā koe, how are you? Look, great to be here, and as Campbell said, it's just wonderful to come back and see how much things are progressing, not only locally, regionally and nationally, but how people are becoming more focused, both from the questions I've heard today and the discussions that are progressing around how do we share data, how do we collaborate better, how do we build better biosecurity systems to lock in the gains we're making. But basically, we're all coming together for a common purpose of transforming biodiversity, heading towards a predator-free 2050. A sensational change, even in just the last couple of years, in the nature of the conversation. So I'm really, really excited about that. My talk today is going to be a game of two halves, really. I'll talk a little bit about the Next Foundation, who I work for currently. I want to then just an update on where the Taranaki Mounga Project is at and the learnings that we're getting therein. There's some key points I hope to share with you. I also want to then talk about the collective scale that we're now getting to. You know, some regional projects are at the stage now we're looking at about how to go bigger within their own regions. Well, now we want to look at is how do we optimise the learnings across the whole country? How do we share data? How do we organise ourselves to optimise what one guy's Campbell's doing here with what's happening in Taranaki, with what's happening down on, in Christchurch? There are obviously ways that we can think about going faster and getting our systems working better. Although there's been some other themes in here around, you know, what's essential to all of this is bringing people together to collaborate better, and it's happening more and more. The Next Foundation, so great slides are down here. And most of you will know we're very, very fortunate to have funding from some successful New Zealanders who are very sharp business people, and they have set us a challenge of spending down over 10 years $100 million to transform outcomes in environment and education. We aim to be invest in things that are transformational, things that inspire others to emulate what we're doing or do better themselves, and also to be business-like in their approach, which requires good data. Thank you, Grant. Our areas of investment are in the environment, when Predator-Free New Zealand is top of our list at the moment, which gets you to large-scale ecological restoration. We also look at healthy rivers and environmental education. Education side is also going gangbusters, but that's another story altogether. Our aim is to leave a legacy of environmental and educational excellence for all New Zealanders. There's been a story so far. It started 8 or 9 years ago, 10 years ago now. In 2008, Rotorua Island was an investment, and there are people in this room who contributed to that. Then Project Yarn Zoom, which is a large-scale $1 million a year investment just with the Department of Conservation and the community there to restore Abel Tasman National Park. Then you heard from Al Bramley yesterday and what the team and Phil Bell and others are doing at Zero Invasive Predators to get us the best tools that we can get to eradicate and defend large areas of the landscape, and they're making remarkable progress. It's fantastic to see. We then have invested recently, the last couple of years, in Taranaki Mounga, and we're now looking at building a project with the two councils in Wellington City Council and Greater Wellington Regional Council. It's in build phase currently. It's progressing really well. So, to the Taranaki Mounga Project, we had a vision to restore the ecological vitality of Taranaki Mounga in partnership with iwi agencies and community. And you'll see our catchline here, Kawa Ora, back to life. That comes from an ancient karakia from the people of Taranaki, which was said over soldiers many years ago as they returned to Taranaki to restore them back to life. It's how we think about our maunga and how we're going to transform the outcomes there. It's been a long journey. It took 2 years just to start. When I was with Doc some years ago, we sat down with the team from what became the Next Foundation, and they said, what would we do if we wanted to transform biodiversity outcomes in New Zealand? And we pitched up 10 opportunities. They chose Taranaki Mounga as a place to start because we could see the great coherency in that region And if we could do it well there, it should be able to be a model or an exemplar for others. Part of that was hopefully to inspire others to think bigger, and now that's happening, and you would have heard from Steve Ellis this morning and Wild for Taranaki, we're now going to a much wider impact for that region, and that's happening elsewhere in the country as well. And of course, you all know that Predator-Free 2050 has been announced. But what's fundamental in Taranaki, we're having these three crucial players at the table. Next, as an independent catalytic investor, new investment from the Department of Conservation with their team, their skills and extra resource, and the Taranaki Iwi Leaders Forum at the governance table right at the start, bringing that collective of wisdom and help to the whole project. It couldn't happen without that as a starting point, absolutely necessary. We then went out, once we had a plan and some achievable outcomes in an 18-month period, we went out to other investors and said, hey, we need help. We can't achieve it without your support. And now we have these investors, including Landcare Research, who bring a whole lot of research acumen to our program. The Taranaki Savings Bank Community Trust, not only resources, but insight into that community. Jasmine Social Investments, Sam Morgan, and Shell New Zealand. And I'll talk a bit more about those later on. Also strongly supported by the community in Taranaki itself. You know, Rotukari Scenic Reserve Trust gave over 1,400 hours of volunteer time to our translocational tautauai recently. There's been a lot of other insight they've given us as well. Taranaki Kiwi Trust actually run the Kiwi Restoration Program alongside us. Again, insightful help. The Taranaki Regional Council, you've heard from those guys what they're going. Wild for Taranaki, Good Nature, the Science Challenge, Kiwi for Kiwi Trust. There are lots of people helping us, others I haven't mentioned already. Much like Cape to City, it's taking a while to build that collaboration, but everyone is getting on the same page for the common purpose. Just want to note our board structure so you can see how it fits together. Jamie Tudor is an independent director, but is also an iwi leader from Taranaki. Hemi Sugren represents the iwi of Taranaki as a director on the board. Devon McLean, a director from Next, most of you will know. Merv English, a senior leader from Department of Conservation, senior liaison officer on that board. Rob Yeager, the CEO of Shell New Zealand, an observer on that board. And Maria Ramsey, the CEO of the Taranaki Savings Bank Community Trust. Myself and Sean sitting over here working, and there is a range of staff in DOC who are full-time or part-time contributing, as well as a number of contractors. Values. The values have been thematic through the last 2 days, I've heard, and I can't over-describe how important they are in demonstrating your values, how you operate. It's about building trust and about building enduring relationships over the long term. And if you're not operating under a set of values where there's paucity of data, there'll be disruptions, there'll be changes, and you won't have all the science that you need to answer your questions. You need to have good data, good values, and good relationships to help you make good decisions. Absolutely essential. And these are derived with the iwi of Taranaki to help us. Clear outcomes. Ecological resilience of the Mounga is restored. The community owns this transformation and take it forward after we leave. We're only here for a short time as a foundation. And that we inspire others to either emulate or go beyond what we're trying to achieve. Our objectives are separated out for a purpose. One of your risks in projects of this scale is scope creep. So we really wanted to stay on focus and have our primary objectives on the mountain, remove the threats, restore the biodiversity, build community support and commitment around it. Others are going to lead the other work around the mountain, which will help secure this into the future, such as the Regional Council and Wild for Taranaki. Oranga Mounga, Oranga Tangata is another objective that we support but don't lead, and that's bringing well-being outcomes to people who are involved in the project in some way. It truly is landscape scale, as you've seen previously, but our focus is on the national park as it is and the islands off the coast of Taranaki, just so you're clear of the landscape. But it truly is the whole region, and you've seen the previous descriptions from Steve around how the whole region is now backing it and putting a halo protection around it, hopefully alongside Predator-Free 2050. So for our first objective, we really did work hard to establish some early wins to provide value to our investors, some measurable wins, so we could say, one, to our partners, we are here to do business and we are going to achieve things. So these things have been achieved in the last 18 months, and it's going gangbusters already, and we've had tautauai fledged and chicks, and those birds haven't been on that mountain for over 100 years. Just to reiterate what Grant was saying earlier around data, hugely essential, not only for managing and measuring ecosystem change, but also you have to tell a story to the investors. That's whether you're a ratepayer, a taxpayer, a philanthropist, or a business investor. You must be able to tell the story of your progress and be transparent about when you're not, because you then will need help from others. So data, data, and data, hugely essential. And the curation of that data and the capture of that data, it has to be the fuel for us all to get to a predator-free outcome. Restoring the species, a lot of work, again, mostly gathering data, surveying, understanding the network. The Taranaki Kiwi Trust is putting monitoring kiwis tracked on the mountain so we can understand that population. We're doing surveys at Otakari Scenic Trust around how is the translocation of tautauai occurring, and a lot of other data being gathered. But our a coup de grace in the first period, the last 18 months, was to put tautauai, a really tangible outcome that involved the whole community in that process. And these are photos from those couple of days, and it's been amazing, the feedback and the reconnection of people to that mountain, to that place, and to this particular species. Won't dwell on this. This has been told earlier today, but suffice to say, we wouldn't even think about doing this at the scale we are without the support of the other partners in the region. And Kirsten Foley's recently joined as a manager of Waipa Taranaki. He's got a big job to coordinate and make coherent the efforts of all the other partners around Taranaki, but they've invested in a plan, a strategy with a coherent goal and a common purpose that they can all work towards, we can all work towards. So our fifth objective, I just want to dwell on this a wee bit, it's a personal passion of mine, having learnt and seen how people can be transformed and feel well and feel fantastic about being involved in the outdoors, particularly in some of these biodiversity projects, and we saw it in that tautauai translocation. We've also got some programs running. One's been initiated with Tuiora, which is a health promotion, a Māori health provider in Taranaki, where they're taking at-risk kids, 11 to 13-year-old age group, co-designing a program to go back onto that mountain and reconnect. Eventually they'll be actually doing work, but this first phase, these kids are designing the program for the future along with the officials. And hearing the feedback from some of these guys has been quite incredible. They've lived in Taranaki all their life. Only 1 of 15 of that first cohort had ever been on that mountain. So even that is a step in itself. But you have to understand the challenges. Some of them didn't have shoes to get there. And so we have to work at all levels across the whole community to reconnect people to that vision. And that's taking, we're lucky to have some great support from people like John Kirwan, Whānau Order Commission and Tui Order leading that. There are other programs doing similar things that we can build a framework so that when these kids go on and do this work or others, they can see a common goal, so they're contributing to something much bigger than themselves and feel a lot of worth and a lot of reward for being involved. Similarly, the coordination being done and the research being developed by Waipa Taranaki around how do you get the best education outcomes, how do you get a common story, how do you coordinate volunteers, that's all being worked on as we speak, again by the wider collective. So collaboration, to stepping back more generally now, as we start to scale up, we're going to have some challenges about how to coordinate and how to collaborate. But what you're actually doing is reconciling differences of understanding, differences in power and authority, and differences in resourcing. And it's a trick. People come with different mental models and different contributions. You have to actually sit back and make the best out of all of those partners, all of those supporters, so everyone feels a sense of worth for being involved. It's not easy and it takes time, But if you have a clear common purpose and you recognise and celebrate and enable people to be involved, it's actually rewarding for everyone. So you build trust by doing things and being successful, showing the value in that, and you also have to hold people to purpose. You can change your plan because you're learning as you go, but your purpose, although it can be adapted, needs to be clear and agreed on and owned by the people in the project and the people at that place. Convening across the system is happening regionally, and you can see it here in the Hawke's Bay. The question is, how do we convene across the system nationally? How do we share those learnings, as I was mentioning earlier? The Collaboration Continuum, and many of you would have seen this before, there have been silos operating in the past in lots of areas, and they still do in some places. How do we move across this continuum to be actually enabling each other? Whakamana and manaakitanga. How do we ensure that your success is actually more important than mine in some ways? Because actually that's how you build your trust and get your bigger outcomes. How do you enable others to be successful? Fully integrated programs, people coherently on the same page, working together. Jamie Artaria yesterday spoke about iwi leadership and a post-treaty environment, and so did Campbell earlier today. Just absolutely critical. I'm going to reiterate it. There are it's essential for so many reasons. Now, I looked through Jamie's slides overnight, and there's some really credible, coherent rationale in there, but there are others. The worldview of connection, or whakapapa, is just central to the Māori worldview. If we can bring that into how we do our business of biodiversity restoration and bringing others to this party, we'll be far further ahead in achieving those outcomes. Living with and enabling the environment to succeed, manaakitanga, enhancing the mana of each other. Amon spoke to it this morning beautifully from Reconnecting Northland. I thought that was fantastic. That enhances the Māori and the connectivity of everyone as well as the species in that project. This is a unique and intact, tangible, credible value set that we have in New Zealand, which can go a long way to helping us all achieve these outcomes. And I think the more we can bring them into with the stories, as Koro Trevor spoke this morning, or earlier this afternoon, and others, the more successful we will all be in enabling each other. There's also some other strong reasons. There's a huge cohort of successful Māori business corporations accumulating wealth, accumulating business acumen, with value sets intact like these, which we can share to enable us all to be successful for New Zealand Inc. Business and community interests, there were some gasps from some people in the conservation community when we said we are going to work with Shell New Zealand. But I can tell you that they have been one of the best partners in this particular consortium. Their professionalism and passion is unmatched. They bring business systems around health and safety, customer relationship management, comms, community insight, social license. I mean, they've been working hard to be successful as a business for all these years, and they're transferring these skills to help us be successful in the Mounga project. I can't undertell that story, because I have to say I was challenged initially, but they have been fantastic partners. Taranaki Savings Bank Community Trust, as well as the resourcing that they bring a massive amount of community insight, a massive amount of understanding and knowledge of who's doing what in the community in Taranaki. That feedback at the board level and with their staff and their teams has been huge. It's insightful, helps us make better decisions. And of course, it all adds to the people owning this outcome themselves throughout the whole region. Challenges, and you would have talked about most of these already these last couple of days. The technical capability to design for eradication is scant. There are some people in the country focusing on it, but it's taking a change of mental models, a change of attitude, and it will take a change of systems to actually achieve eradication, and we're not there yet. Most people, I think, are still using status quo approach. We actually need to use different systems, different ways of thinking, and different norms to achieve eradication. It takes a huge amount of time to build trust, to have compatible partners working collectively for for common outcomes, not usually in a budget line, not usually described as a requirement, but Campbell and others will tell you how many cups of tea, how many meetings he's had in Wellington, how many conferences he's talked at, and how many conversations he's had in the farming community, as has the rest of his team. It is crucial. And you have to be really sensitive about how you do it and where you go, and that's a skill. That's not a job for anyone or everyone. Some scientists may not be the best at telling the science story. Some are. Some people in councils may not be the best in connecting with communities. Some are. There is a balance of how you do it, and how you apply the skill and resourcing to that challenge is critical. Data, again, I'm going to mention it again, it's not just about how we systemise it, how we curate it. Now we're getting to the stage of how do we share it well. We have to gather it well, but we now have to learn how to share it. Yes, there are personal challenges about telling your story when you fail, but that's how we're going to learn. So we have to actually build trust so we can get shared value collectively to get to the outcomes that we're all after. And again, how do we communicate well? How do we not repeat ourselves in science and learning and process? And how do we tell a coherent story at a regional level? And we're having that challenge now in Taranaki. Also at a national level when we get challenges coming at us. It's a question that we haven't yet solved. So for making impact at scale, we really need to think about your common vision, common metrics. Think about how you genuinely bring people in when there are definite power inequalities. We need to think about how we make people feel like they're equal in the partnerships and be equal in those partnerships. A common agenda so everyone understands what everyone else is doing in the system, so you can play your role well. Role clarity is a part of that. What's your job to do, and how can I do that to enable those guys to succeed? You need to have multiple opportunities to connect, and congratulations to the Cape City team for putting this on, because this is a perfect forum for sharing some of the learnings. And it's not about the individual entities, it's about the system, it's about the network. It's how we can all be successful. We need to be agile as we learn, but committed to the vision and the purpose. And I just highlight the communication. It's internally in your own organisations, internally in your own regions, and then externally at all levels and all the time. Again, not well resourced, not well understood, but we need to be better at it, and that's a challenge. So the question that Campbell asked me was, how can we think about providing assurance for investors? One of them is good data, good metrics, and how you achieve those. You need to have effective, compatible partners at your core table. We included iwi, DOC, and the Catalyst being the next foundation for Taranaki. There might be a different set in other parts of the country, but you need to find your good leadership forums and then add to that. A coherent and clear purpose is essential so that investors can see that it is clear, that you are clear about what you're trying to achieve. A single purpose, clearly articulated, is actually hard to do. 8 words or less, I would suggest. You need committed leadership from your partners. It's not like, okay, we're going to sign up to this MOU and just let you get on with it. We actually don't just want your resource, we want your acumen, we want your intel, we want your insights. So committed leadership from the organisations can also steer that organisation to adapt, to be better at contributing to the collective outcome. I'll talk about the Tomorrow Accord shortly, but that's about achieving gains and then shifting the cost elsewhere. Evaluation and metrics I've talked about. If you're not measuring, you can't manage. And there are other legal and planning instruments which the Regional Council space and Mike this morning spoke to, or this afternoon. Fantastic that the RPMPs and Biosecurity Act and the question are being thought of as tools to ensure that the gains that are made are sustained in the long term. Thank you. So the Tomorrow Accord is an accord that was signed between the Next Foundation on behalf of other philanthropic investors and the government, and it basically says if we do the heavy lifting and invest hard at the start of these projects and do a huge resource investment, and then we can hopefully achieve the outcome and get to a maintenance phase, then the government will hold that outcome in perpetuity. Okay? It's critical that we are able to demonstrate that and are able to demonstrate the transition. For instance, in Abel Tasman National Park, they've just about, I don't know, Al might tell me here, they've eradicated wilding pines, right? So now they can shift the maintenance of that eradication back to DOC, and it should be bugger all. They've brought back kaka. That's still a long way to go before it's an abundant, resilient population, but when that's done, and if the trapping securities are done and the network of predator control is sorted, that should be relatively inexpensive to maintain. So forward investing and getting philanthropists or other businesses to come to this problem will require definition of metrics that can be achieved and transitioned at lower cost back to the government or another entity to pay for. I'd suggest the taxpayer will be a good place to start because we all want that outcome. That makes sense? Whakaraupo ia koutou te iwi, an ancient whakatauki from Te Whiti o Rongomai in Parihaka. If we stand together, we bend, but we do not break. Kia ora mai tātou.